Let me just introduce the other editors in the newsroom who will also be looking at your copy and your ideas, and we will welcome them or throw them out. To my right is Chaimae, I'm so sorry. Chaimae is a Moroccan journalist, and she represents the Moroccan Forum for Young Journalists. She's also an activist, and she has strong views. Anything else would not be possible in the newsroom. To her right is Olga. Olga is a software engineer, and she has actually an interesting story to tell, which is a new business model, a new way of making news interesting. And to Olga's right is Ali, who I think people have met. Ali is a TV presenter, you'll explain yourself. Yeah, TV celebrity who lives between Germany and the US and has equally strong views. And I am Chitra, and I am a wilting widow. I have no strong views at all. So I shall quickly pass the telephone to my colleagues on the right to make one or two comments, tell us who they are, and then we will go to the different desks. As I've said, I'll come with the mic and you tell us what you think, and then we'll get into the discussion. So,
hello everyone, and good appetit. I'm Chaimae, I'm a journalist and activist, and today I'll be representing the Moroccan Forum for Young Journalists. I'll be here to retell a little bit the Moroccan journalist experience and just lay light a little bit on the challenges that we are facing today in an increasingly digitalized web.
Okay, so very nice of you to come here and join us. My name is Olga, and I'm a software engineer, so I don't really know what I did wrong to end up on this panel with other journalists. No, but I'm very honored to be here, actually. I'm a software engineer, and a couple of years back I went to a hackathon. So basically, you built something during 24 hours, and the theme for the hackathon was Hack the News. So I figured, what can I build during 24 hours that interests me and actually will give me some value? So I started thinking, okay, what do I want to know about the media? And I figured that I would really love to know how many women and how many men are featured in the news, in the everyday news. So I built a prototype that basically checked 20 articles from the biggest newspaper in Sweden, and I checked for names and for other words that implied that a woman or man had been mentioned. And the numbers I got was terrifying. So basically, from those 20 articles, and I know that's not statistically correct or anything, but still, it was 13% women. And this is in Sweden.
And this is in Sweden. I mean, when I was growing up, Sweden was the place to be for women. So this is in Sweden, and not in the last century. It's now. So
yeah. So this gave me an indication that something was really, really wrong, and I started researching more about it, and I found actually that there is a global project called the Global Media Monitoring Project, and what they do is every 3 or 4 years they coordinate journalists and universities all over the world, and for one day they go through news articles and check for occurrences of women and men. But the thing is that this is very inaccurate because it's only during one single day. So for example, one of the days that they had selected was during the German Wings air crash, where a pilot crashed an airplane into Montpellier. And so all the news were filled about this event. So it skewed the measurement. So basically, I built the tool that in real time measured this and sell it back to the newsrooms. So they have screens where the journalists actually can see okay, today how many women have we been writing about? And hopefully next time they call an expert, they will call a female expert instead of the male.
So the question that I will come back to you is that do women make better journalists? Is it important to have more women in the newsroom? And I know I'm walking in troubled waters, but let's answer that question. Ali, you have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. I mean, clearly, not only do we need more women in journalism, we need more diversity generally in journalism. I mean, if I'm based in Germany, and if I'm looking at the newsrooms, it's still pretty much dominated by white males, you know, and I think even in the United States, where I started my career, that holds pretty much true. The only thing that concerns me is that journalists and the profession of journalism is increasingly unpopular. If I'm looking at the list of popularity indexes of profession, journalism rank pretty much at the bottom these days. And that has to do with the fact that journalists are being increasingly perceived as part of the establishment. As part of the establishment. And it used to be that the original idea of journalists and journalism, of course, is that journalists were not supposed to be part of the establishment. Quite on the contrary, they were supposed to control and observe the establishment in order to make sure that the corruption and other shortcomings are not the case. And I think, and I'm very self-critical in that term, I think there's an argument to be made. There's an argument to be made that journalism and journalists have become somewhat detached, has been detached from reality, have become detached from the real stories, what really concerns the people. I think the 200 story on Trump and his tweets and so on and so forth is at the end of the day of minor importance compared to what really is concerning people on the streets. And I think we need to get back to that. I think we need to get back to the fundamentals of journalism.
Okay, so time to go to the tables. Who will speak first? You should go there. Okay, can you present this? Would you like to have?
As someone who works on product and design, I think that just because people's attentions are getting shorter, I'm not sure if making things more entertaining is necessarily the best way to go, because we're actually training people and meeting them at their comfort zone. We're actually, in some ways, both journalism, information, knowledge, education, all these things are things that should stretch us out a little bit farther. And so I find that if we can get technology to actually feed what's good for us instead of the candy that's bad for us, instead of giving us short sound bites. I really wish I could get Trump sound bites out of my feeds, right? But I think that being able to get really good quality long form stuff into our normal sense of things that we read, that would be great.
That's important. I mean, for the last 2 days, all of us who attended these sessions, what have we heard? We've heard a lot of stuff. Everybody is saying, tell the stories that cut through the noise. Tell stories. Some of you said, let's rate the conversations. It's important. You made the point about putting human beings, telling stories that matter. We're all storytellers in one way or the other. Newsrooms are storytellers. We need to reclaim the newsrooms back because they have become, as Chaimae was saying, journalists don't make stories anymore. They just go from clickbait to clickbait, and that has to change. So in this table,
as an outsider, as technology or as the medium is changing in almost all formats, it's changing here also. And I think that's something that both the professional of journalists and the readers or the subscribers are still kind of orienting themselves, especially in the age of constantly being inundated with information. What is information versus what is fact versus what is opinion? That is a world that is getting too meshed.
In my newsroom, if I'm the editor, this would be like a marketing guy argument. Not knowing where we. I'm not putting you down. It's important in the newsroom to understand as well how we sell news. I don't know if you guys want to come in. Oh yes. What about you guys? Yes. So in a newsroom, that's what happens. I mean, there's the editor, and then there is all this. Everybody's breaking a story. Everybody thinks their story should be in first.
Is there a future for them? Thank you.
Good points, very good points. I think the radio is a superb medium, continues to be someone where people trust. It's the voice, it's the all that the journalist has, and I'm a radio fan. I grew up with it, and it's a superb medium. We talk about it. Who is speaking here? Don't push mics around.
So, mainstream journalism is dying. We don't know whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but we believe that journalism is undergoing a major transformation. I think enabled by the technology, it has democratized at least for the people, the sources of information from where they get the news from. But it also created a problem such as the fake news, the deep fakes, and all that. And I also believe that today the individual journalist is more equipped than his predecessors could have been in the previous generations, primarily because of the technology. But from the reader's point of view also, what I feel is that the shorter attention spans are there, but from the editor's point of view, those shorter attention spans have translated into simplification rather than putting into that simplification has come at the cost of the nuance.
Thank you. That would be a diplomatic correspondent or an edit page writer.
Now is, in terms of the business model, looking very similar to what the music industry looked like 10 or 15 years ago. And then iTunes and Spotify came around, and it made it very easy to buy and listen to music without having to go to a number of many different platforms and finding things that you like. And there's a reason why people don't go on Facebook or Twitter to listen to music, because they go on Spotify or iTunes to do that. So I think maybe journalism needs to reclaim the medium and remove its content from social media and have something like iTunes or Spotify and share the content there. There's one startup in the Netherlands called Blendel that's already doing that. And what they've built is iTunes for journalism, where you can go online and buy a story for as little as 20 cents. And it's reinventing the business model, because instead of relying on subscriptions that are based on the assumption that one person is going to pay for content from 3 or 5 different media outlets that they follow. Instead, you allow them to choose the media that they want to consume and liberalize the market.
A person telling us about the business model taking from music, and I think it's
for their viability in the future is credibility. I think probably if they can work on that one, they might have a place in the future. The second thing is also going beyond the job of informing, of analyzing, of telling people what is behind the story. And these two elements could probably be in their advantage.
Thank you. So basically, tell the story, but then also come back and explain. Space with intelligent dialogue, not shouting at each other, and just, it's a public good which must be publicly claimed. I believe that, and this is going to be difficult for all of you to understand, but I hope not. I think fake news is bad journalism. I don't think that there's something called fake news. In my time, when people wrote bad stories, we would say, God, what fake this is. That's what it is. What is worrying is that there's money going into people who are now tracking fake news. So you're actually building a fake compartment which should be destroyed. For me, the money should be going into promoting good journalism. And the people who put money known as journalism, they just know business. Clickbaits, quickly, false news. At the end of the day, everything is false. But then we come back to our panelists. Anyone who start.
Okay, so I really think you had some very interesting remarks and questions, and I will try to address a couple of them in one combined thing. And will make you the most angriest, because that is the feeling that will keep you longer on the platform. So a huge problem is that with the newspapers having all their content on those platforms is, as you were saying, that it makes people angry. So that, I think, is a huge part in the big disbelief in traditional media, that people are only seeing it in a context where they're being shown the opposite of what they believe in. And so they get angry and they think this is shit, basically. So I think it's a really interesting idea to have a new kind of platform that is not
owned by like Google and Facebook that take all the ad money and instead create their own platforms. But I think as a software developer or like software engineer, I tend to think that like, oh, a new technological solution will solve the problem, and I totally understand that it won't, but I think it's one step in the right direction.
Just quickly to come in, I mean, as far as the business models, gentlemen, I couldn't agree more. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody needs to reinvent themselves, right? There used to be a company called Kodak. Some of the older ones like myself will remember Nokia. I mean, these companies have not gotten with the times and they disappeared. And it's a very same thing with journalism, because at the end of the day, I think we need to get away from this whole high and mighty. Journalism is a business. It's a business at the end of the day. And if I am concerned about writing a particular story because it might exasperate a potential, giver of advertisement, then right there and then I think we have the problem. Journalism, as I said, the essence is not God-given. I think we need to rid ourselves. The only thing you need to do every day is sleep, eat, and drink in order to survive. Journalism, if you think about it all the time, is not a concept. It's a relatively new concept. And if it serves its purpose as a really honest watchdog, as a watchdog of the powerful, because I think that's where the stress of the media and of journalism comes in these days, is people feel that journalism are in bed with the powerful, both political and business. And if we do not break that cycle, if we do not come across as an honest broker, as somebody who is an advocate, if you will, of the people on the street and go on for the very hard stories, I think that's a cycle that is going to be very hard to break. Because as you can already see from the people and the comments that I've received here in the audience, they're pretty good reflection of the moods and attitude people have towards journalism these days. And I think that is definitely a cause for concern.
So I think the point that Ali has made is that people are not stupid, and people are first not stupid. They know what's going on, they know where the money is coming from, and somewhere newsrooms have to figure out that if they really want to be journalists, do journalism, good journalism, it can be done. It's not going to be easy, but in the end, it's going to pay off. I see a hand going up there. Let's come back to Chaimae. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm an economist, and so I'm happy to be here amongst people that can actually see the real world. The assumption, I mean, I still can't believe what we heard yesterday about what's happening in Afghanistan, where 4 people out of 5 absolutely believe anything that's on Facebook. And even in Italy, which has arguably a better education system there, people are still thinking about things that don't exist. So, as you said, we really need to consider journalism as a public good. Now, who decides what this public good is? Controversial, because some of the people that have been elected have used this sort of a perverse mechanism to get there. But the assumption people are not stupid out there, I disagree with that.
For bringing that up, I wasn't going to go there. But there is this is, and they are very dangerous. He basically breaks the people down into four sections, and I'm really paraphrasing. First is the saints, who take care of everybody. Second is the thieves, who harm everybody. Third is people like us, little good for you, little good for me. And the fourth is the stupido, who does so bad, doesn't realize, and they are all organized, and they don't know how they're organized. So that's one point. The other point is something that Chaimae was saying, is that there is no time in the newsroom today. And I think we need to address this, and I would like you to speak about the pressures that you face in the newsroom today as a young journalist.
So, when I decided to become a journalist, tell their story, and I wanted to be that medium that would just bring light to their suffering or their experiences and such. And so I started in a very enthusiastic way. We just wanted to cover all the hard news, the interesting story, and everything. But when you actually experience how things work, especially when you work on a website, so you have to cover, I don't know, about 4 or 5 pieces a day, And so you can work on like two pieces that you choose, and they can be very interesting story, what you believe are to be hard news, either way it's about economics or social thing or anything. And you dedicate about 70% of your time working on those. Unfortunately enough, they're not sexy enough. Yeah. People don't like to read about economy or what's going on with our how the government is allocating budgets to Ministry of Health or whatever. They want sexy stuff. They want sensational stuff. They want to be entertained mainly. So I'll be writing about what I believe to be important, but no one will care about that. I'll just bring about 2-4 clicks, and then I'll write about something. I don't know. Something that people would consider fun, something sensational, something I believe to be completely absurd, and it would just create a huge buzz. I mean, like 90% of my salary would come out of those news. So it is quite frustrating because I believe that I want to follow my own principles. I want to work with my own convictions and only relay something that I'd be proud of. But I would not eat. No one would pay me to just write about what people consider boring stuff. So yeah, that's and first of all, I mean, there is this issue, and then the second one is that when you are so pressed with the urgency of time and you need to produce so much, you have so little time to actually verify the accuracy of the news, or to pick up the phone and call anyone to say, is this true or not? So you just, take dice, and if it's true, then that's great. If it's not, then probably not really that much sometimes, just because, okay.
Let me just come in quickly and say that it used to be that you didn't know the political position and opinions of a journalist. Right? Now, unfortunately, in this day and age, that's all you hear about. I can't remember the last time I saw a news piece, both on television or where I did not know at the end of the day what the authors or reporters or correspondents' feelings were about the story. And I think right there and then, that's a big problem, because at the end of the day, facts, we keep preaching that facts are important, but what we're really doing, most of the journalists are doing these days, they're just another opinion in the big pond. And even, I have to be very honest and straight about it, even the coverage of the New York Times and the Washington Post about Donald Trump is causing me fatigue at the end of the day. Because is this still journalism if you are constantly repeating the same mantra about a clearly very controversial president without the many shades that this president is? I don't want to be misunderstood.
No, but you don't have to be. The Anglo-Saxon media has a bias. I mean, Anglo-Saxon media looks upon the rest of the world like they don't exist. So you're not having a bias. It's a very felt thing. So no, you're right. I mean, I'll just he has a question, and then I'll come to you.
But if I can just butt in a little bit, I think this is where data actually can be very, very useful, because in the same way as the newsrooms kind of don't really know how much women and men they're writing about, I'm not really sure that they are aware of how many people with different ethnicity, you know what I mean, and age, for example, but also how little they write about the rest of the world. Because I think, as you were saying, there is a huge bias about, like, in Europe, you only write about Europe and the US, and you have no idea about what's happening in the rest of the world. And I think that data would actually help journalists realize how little they cover the rest of the world.
Yeah. So,
good. I'm saying in media, there's certain words I see that journalists are more negative in their reporting. So instead of saying that someone X, Y, and Z mentioned, they'll say X, Y, and Z confirmed. So there are certain terminologies that they're not very sensitive to that they were sensitive to 10, 15 years ago. So as journalists, do you take it upon yourself to call out the other journalists saying this is not how it is? Do you take that responsibility, or do you just say, okay, it's not my work, it's not my business, I'm just going to let it go?
I have an answer, but I want to ask you.
Arabic-speaking journalism, we have French-speaking journalism, and we have English-speaking journalism. And so, this
But here's the good news. Here's the good news. Journalists can't spell. In fact, entire people, nobody can spell. I mean, I'm not a dinosaur, but I'm just look at copy. People cannot spell. And this is across professions. People I know cannot write one paragraph without spelling mistakes. And this is not just journalism. This can be, you can do a PhD, a doctorate, you can be doing anything. You cannot get from one end to the other. Or there's a PowerPoint, which makes even less sense. So the capacity to be able to tell a convenient, good story in decent English, it doesn't have to be a good language, getting to Italian, is gone.
I want to know Ali's perspective. You are, she's young, she's very energetic in a sense, but you are a bit more
cynical? Yeah. Yeah, perhaps. I mean, no, I mean...
Do you call out your colleagues when you know they're reporting in a way that they shouldn't be?
I mean, those I work with or from the or any other of my colleagues, we play judges here. I mean, at the end of the day,
unless it's Fox News. The editor does not filter anything.
Well, you'd be surprised, you know, I gotta tell you, it's another misperception. You'd be surprised. There are actually a few good journalists working for Fox News, you know, I mean, this may not, no, well, it's, no, I'm saying, look, these narratives don't help us, you know, and this is the point I keep hammering about. If journalism becomes predictable, and right now it's predictable, I know what the New York Times is going to write about a certain thing, I know what Fox News is going to say about a third thing, I know what the Washington Post is going to write. There's no objective surprise element missing. Now, we're not going to conclusively come with a solution and decide whether people are stupid or not, as my Italian friend was saying. But the important thing is, and this is really the point that I keep hammering about, is there are still very important tasks for journalists to fulfill. It's not a coincidence that freedom of press and freedom of media are enshrined, upheld, and protected in any liberal democracy.
Absolutely.
Something unfortunately that is, even in Europe, if we're looking at countries like Poland and Hungary, that is slowly on the back burner, something that should give us great deal of concern. The question is, how do we use this privilege? How do we make use of this right? How do of this privilege and this protection in order to shed light on the many issues that we're doing? And if I'm reading mainstream newspaper these days, very little surprising elements, and this is what I'm missing. You know, this is what I'm missing. I'm sure you know, if you read about the news, were you satisfied about the coverage of the Indian election by Western media?
No, I wrote about it. I thought it was god awful because they all quoted each other, and they completely missed the point. Even Indian missed the point, simply because we're all part of this. No, I wasn't. But that's okay. It's my job to be unhappy as a journalist. But I read everything. I even read backs. I read menu cards. I read everything. So I don't place myself as no. But no, you're right. I think it's important to push back. And journalists have to push back. And I think the pushback begins in these kinds of conferences. If 5 people go out of here and say, no, hey, something is happening. I do believe something is happening, by the way. Something is happening. And nobody knows. Nobody knows what that is. And I think it's a good thing that's happening. Yeah. Which is why we are talking about this. Gentlemen, I believe in the radio. I think it's super radio. So, yes, no, there was a hand up there. Oh, we've managed to excite you and get you going.
And see if it's true or not. And then you have to sit and say, wait, no, this is what's wrong, and this specific part is wrong, this is what's problematic, and this is what you need to do. And I've had to do that with a couple of pieces which actually have come, and where you have to say, no, this is wrong, this is what's actually happening. And it's much more difficult over there. This is, what happens is, when you keep opposing your fellow journalists, it becomes a little bit more money. So we don't trust each other. And with journalists, everyone always trusts each other. So that's
It's an important point. There's bullying in newsrooms. There's pretty serious.
Rebirth Taliban. Yes.
She brings they're like
protesting against.
They they did inside of our country, that they
might have their presence.
yeah. So they give them somehow power. They give them somehow that you are important. So, and Taliban use media to talk. And they become spokespersons of Taliban in Afghanistan. What is the responsibility of media? To report every single thing?
Between reporting and between becoming part of the stories that we are getting used.
I think that sometimes everyone likes to talk and hear about the monster that scares everyone, because when people are afraid of something, when people are reading something, so they want to gather as much information about it as possible. So there is a good business for journalists. They can sell more when they can talk about something that people are afraid of and who just want to know everything so they can defend themselves against it. So, but this often backfires because, like you said, you just re-earth something that we already defeated, but we talk about it so much that we give it more power than it is. And I think at this point it comes to some kind of institutions or organizations that need to regulate this kind of stuff. National Press Council or journalist organizations in the country that can push for a balance in the news coverage and also raise awareness in newsroom that, well, you have to create some kind of balance. You cannot just keep reporting about this subject and just disregard all the good things that are happening and that people need to know about. And I also think that I see that this sort of journalism is somehow corrupt because it is often used by a lot of people with different agendas to just push a certain feeling to feed a certain feeling into the public and direct the public opinion and conversation in a certain way.
I think it's important what she's saying about this kind of censorship, which is latent, and then you just don't do those stories because everybody wants to be famous, everybody wants to get. You feed on fear, you feed on difference, you feed on diversity, you pretend you're a friend of difference, but you actually are not. It's very insidious in the media. So I think that's the point, right? I'll come back to you on can data-driven advocacy help? Because I think it's important, the point you made about bringing data. But monkeys, I'm not saying you're a monkey, but monkeys can gather data. But how do you link data into policy? But that is something we'll come back, and I'm told we have about 15, 20 minutes. Gentlemen, you have a question.
If I'm a journalistic house, a media company, if I need to make money, I would completely employ weapons or tools that just generate profit for me. And I don't care about what goes out there. If it's a profit motive that I'm after, who regulates that? And what the society wants?
Good question, and we're sort of going towards the end of this session, which I'm told we straight. You want to know whatever. I mean, I'm not looking down. There's also interest in what famous people do. But is it in public interest? What is in public interest? Is there public health? Is there stuff happening? Is the minister lying? So let us also start pushing. Yes, it's a public good. It's in public interest, of public interest. And this is why I think data begins to become important. The kind of work, Olga, you're doing, I think it's important. To talk a little more about, the feedback you got and how you want to expand it into the English language.
Okay, so actually, we're all talking about how nothing sells like fear, and this has been the truth for a couple of years now, but I think it's important to also, for the media and journalists to change their own narrative and to explore new ways, because even though that, okay, this is the truth that fear sells, but at the same time there's a Swedish newspaper who are using my tool in order to get more women in their news, and they have made the observation that actually women tend to, if they have an article with higher amount of women, more women tend to read those articles. So So there is a correlation between if you want, basically people want to read about themselves. So I think also this is like a huge untapped market that the traditional media are not targeting. So most traditional media are actually targeted against men, and this is very visible if you look at the content that is in them. So for example, why is sports such a huge part of every newspaper when it's only basically half the population that have this huge interest in sports? So why isn't other types of subjects more in the news? So I think that exploring non-traditional subjects and subjects that are of interest to more people, except for middle-aged white dudes who are living in the city center. And I think that this is true also for young people. So maybe if you write more about young people and if you have more younger journalists writing about issues that are important for young people, then it will reach more young people because it will have the right perspective.
Okay. I think we'll conclude. Yeah, sorry.
I have an example
to what Chaimae was saying, and maybe people from India are aware of this. And actually, going back to your first question, is mainstream media being challenged? Is that good? Is that bad? One of the greatest examples from India, and I've interviewed this person, he's only 24 or 23 years old right now. He started a blog, just give me a couple minutes. He started a blog at the age of 17, 18 when he was in high school or college, because he was disenfranchised and completely disillusioned with mainstream media, like most 18-year-olds are today, across the world. It was a personal blog. But very soon he started realizing that a lot of people around him, just within his circle of influence, want to tell a lot of consequential stories. Okay? This was, I think, 2001 or 2. His friend's father was stuck in Libya, where there was civil unrest going on. Or maybe 2010, sorry, I could get the year wrong. Okay? This person's father is stuck over there. No mainstream media, television or newspaper is taking up this subject because it's Libya. We're setting in New Delhi and there's just no sense of perspective. But there were 30,000 Indians stuck in the civil unrest in Libya. This guy wrote a simple blog story published on his blog. Fortunately, because he's in Delhi and he has some influence, he calls a couple of journalists from mainstream media and says, hey, you may want to take a look at this story, it's pretty big. Finally, mainstream media picks it up after this story was viral on the internet and on WhatsApp groups and things like that. In 48 hours, 30,000 people were flown down by the Ministry of External Affairs of India by sending a special bunch of vessels and things like that. So new age platforms of journalism effect change. At times, they also decide and dictate the narrative on mainstream platforms. Because mainstream platforms, we know we are only doing eye candy stuff for Google SEO. Right? That's all we do. We have to pander to the advertisers. We have to serve the Google SEO monster. So we want to. Our heart is in the right place, but we're not doing right journalism. This website is called youthkiawaz.com. The voice of the youth in Hindi. Today, there are 65,000 contributors who write their own stories in over 18 Indian languages from every part of the country, because mainstream media will not send an OB van everywhere. So they've created a great dashboard. So using software to democratize, and anyone can publish their own stories. So maybe that's just to the point of you want to say stories but don't know where.
It's also the capacity to be able to tell. You need a human being who's sensitive. And that's what I think we want to bring back to the newsrooms. We don't want star people, we don't want editors to become stories. That period is gone. Editor is not the story is the star. And I think that the good point about technology, and I'm a big one for that, is that is going to be, something is happening, and the good, I think it's good that's happening. Last comments, and then perhaps we can wrap up the thing. Sorry, excuse me, sir, I didn't see you.
I have a very short question. Independence, financial independence, and non-lobbying and non-corruption attitudes in one basket.
journalists are responsibilized, and the public or the nation puts a huge responsibility on journalists in terms of they are expecting from them honest and significant or important journalism. So they just feel the need to speak up to this kind of responsibility. But when we live in an environment where this is some kind of a trend that journalists can actually be paid off to either talk about certain subjects or not talk about certain subjects, or you are in a country where freedom of speech is kind of limited, or there is big pressure on journalists to either silence some kind of issues or others, so they cannot fight the whole system and they fall.
Yes, sir. Quick comment.
I'd like to address what I just said.
Yes, quickly, because
okay.
yeah, no, okay. No, absolutely.
I think we have to also follow the money. When you talk about corruption, there are a couple of things that must happen. First of all, as an individual, whether you're a journalist or a citizen, you must be self-empowered to have alternate income so that you're not dependent. And this also goes back to the organization of the journalists. You need to pay them. You need to pay them a living wage. You need to, so the owners of the entities also have to understand what is the business model, what is the income model. Because if you don't diversify your income base, then of course you're going to be susceptible to giving into corruption. So I think there's a number of things that have to be addressed there. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So let's round up, whatever.
I would just add the final sentence that for all the frustration that some of you have about journalists and journalism, I'm still very grateful that journalism exists, because at the end of the day, if we look around the world and we see countries where there's no freedom of press and no freedom of media, I think those countries are not better off, quite on the contrary. I think they're poorer for it, culturally poorer, and they are poorer in so many ways. So yes, I understand the frustrations that come with journalism and journalists in the 21st century, but at the end of the day, I think I still uphold the importance and relevance that journalism has and can only appeal to those who might question the profession and the field, that we need better, we need actually journalism, accurate journalism, professional journalism more than ever.
Well, I'm also very grateful for journalists, obviously, but as a tech person, I would just like to finish with a quote from a really good show that's called Halt and Catch Fire, and if you haven't seen it, you should. And basically what that show is about is like the computers aren't the thing, that they're the thing that will get you to the thing. So like, use your tech in a smart way, but it's always the humans that are interesting behind it.
I think that this whole challenge can be difficult, but at the same time they can be inspiring, because they just push you to fight harder. They push you to want to change things from the root of it, not just succumb to the trend that is going on. So you work harder, you try to find more sustainable solutions to these whole issues, and you just want to raise awareness and make people emphasize with what journalism is today, and try to better it for the future.
I couldn't agree more, and that brings us to the end of this scintillating debate, which but yes, I mean, push journalists. I mean, if you're unhappy, just go out and say so. I mean, journalists are good people. They really are people like you and me. We're all normal. We all make mistakes. There's nothing exceptional about us. We're part of the society. So just let's, as you said, sir, that if you want to go far, you go together. And that's the way. And I think technology is there. I'm a great fan. I genuinely believe that technology is the future in the World Wide Web. I mean, it's marvelous. Yes, thank you for coming. I hope you all had a good meal. And merci beaucoup.